A few of you guys might remember that a while back, during my initial review, I left a snarky little comment saying that I won't be using this god-awful artwork in the video thumbnail. Guess it had to happen at some point. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spin Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about the bonus tracks on the physical release of U2 Songs of Innocence. Yup, I'm dedicating not one, not two, but 3 whole videos to this one album. I would have done this back when the physical release came out, back in October, but since my admittedly lazy YouTube searches came up empty when looking for the bonus tracks, I mistakenly thought that bonus track edition hadn't come out yet. But given that I reviewed the album itself a week after it came out and it ended up being my highest viewed review to date, let's just say I didn't really have much reason for concern in that department for this one. And for those of you clicking on this channel for the first time, like I alluded to, I've done 2 other videos on this album, which I released simultaneously around the time it came out. Those being the conventional album review, and one's more of a discussion topic about the way it was released. If you're curious and want to see my thoughts on either of those, which I do highly recommend before you check this out, then videos will be annotated here and linked in the description. Going right into this bonus disc, it includes 11 songs that are basically in 3 different sections. And the first one is the outtakes, Lucifer's Hands and the Crystal Ballroom. Lucifer's Hands is one where I can really understand why they left it off, mostly because musically it just sounds like a lazy mishmash of Vertigo, Volcano, Get on Your Boots, and a bit of T-Rex's 20th Century Boy. Not to mention it's that same lyrical problem that Foster the People's Supermodel had that I talked about in that review annotated here, where it's trying to make some kind of socio-political statement, but it's getting so caught up in all the flowery symbolism that it doesn't really make much of an effective point. The Crystal Ballroom, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Why they chose schlock like California, There Is No Land to Love over this, I'll never know, since it adds a certain dancey, almost disco-like flair that's new to not only this U2 album, but I'm pretty sure U2's entire discography, unless you count Pop, which was really more techno than disco in those spots. And while, of course, U2 making a disco song sounds like a hilarious recipe for disaster, they actually managed to make it work really well. The Edge still is distinctly the Edge here, but he manages to somehow infuse really naturally these little Nile Rodgers-like subtleties in the guitar work. And when it explodes in the chorus with those huge electronics and backing vocals, it just feels, for lack of a better term, right. And the lyrics are actually pretty interesting here too, from what I'm interpreting being about a guy fresh off a breakup going into a club and reluctantly getting caught up in the romantically anonymous spirit of it all. Sure, it's a bit exaggerated at points, but the imagery is just so good in this song that it's pretty easy to overlook. The next section is the acoustic sessions, which, as the title might imply, are stripped-back versions of 6 songs from Songs of Innocence. And in a nutshell, while for fans it's an interesting to listen to once, for the most part, it's not anything that would have a lot of lasting appeal, let alone surpass the originals. One exception to that is Every Breaking Wave, which, with the piano and string section instrumentation, really appeals more to the emotional traits of that song, and I can really see that appealing to people, maybe even more than the original. The Raised by Wolves one is also great, mostly thanks to the string and horn sections that add an almost like Bond theme-like drama to the song at points that I really liked. Better than that, like on the Standard Edition, California is my least favorite here, even with the added horns and lack of the Santa Barbara refrain, and the Cedarwood Road, Song for Someone, and Miracle of Joy Ramones ones are, again, a cool little novelty for fans, but not really much beyond that. The last few tracks are alternate versions of the songs on this album, and in case the one for the Troubles, you can really tell it was an early version before that many revisions were made, both in the music and the lyrics, between the lack of Licky Lee, the clunkier lyrics, and the kinda contradictory chorus compared to the verses, the higher, less fitting key, and the instrumentation that can feel a bit unfocused at times. The Sleep Like a Baby Tonight one is interesting because, while it was one of my least favorites on the Standard Edition, I honestly don't think it would have been if they used this version on there, mostly because the lyrics are a lot more multi-dimensional and interesting, hence the alternate perspective tag on this thing, and the production is good enough for me to actually call it a keeper. If the overuse of Danger Mouse isms on the original version got to you like it did for me, I strongly recommend looking this one up, even if it doesn't fix the whole Bono's falsetto in the bridge thing. There's a pretty good 7-minute extended dance mix of the Crystal Ballroom, mostly adding a longer guitar solo and some vocoder effects on some repeated lines, and that's the deluxe edition of U2 Songs of Innocence. Now, the elephant is kind of in the room that I do feel kind of weird just reviewing a bunch of bonus tracks on a bonus disc, but I am a big U2 fan, and since I already did multiple videos on this album, I figured I'd go all out with this and just sort of fill time between album reviews while still putting together something somewhat interesting. But it's safe to say I'm not going to give this a score, but I will say that if this version of Sleep Like a Baby Tonight was used and the Crystal Ballroom was put on there somewhere, it would have definitely been pushed up to an 8, at least. So if you guys have heard the bonus tracks on U2 Songs of Innocence, man, it feels so weird to say, what do you think of them? Do you think that the Crystal Ballroom or Lucifer's Hands should have been on Standard Edition, or one of the alternate versions? Let me know what you think. Man, this feels so weird. Also, like I said, I made 2 other videos on this, the album review for Songs of Innocence, and the discussion topic where I talk about the release of the album, and like I mentioned in those videos, I did that to sort of keep the 2 topics separate as possible, just so they don't really bleed into each other like a lot of people let that do for them. So, if you're interested in one of those topics, click on one of the videos here, let me know what you think of it, like I said, and hopefully I'll see you on the next episode of Spin Reviews.